You're listening to episode 59, Shay's story, a daughter with Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
I mean, she has changed not just my life or my husband's or our other kids, but other people that we know. Other people in our church and our community have adopted kids, especially kids from China, because they got to know Ashby.
You just got to hear a little snippet from Shay's story, and I am so excited and honored to be able to have her on our podcast today. She is somebody who I have followed for years, so she is just a bright personality. She is full of life. She is positive. She has great style. She's just one of those people that you look at on social media and you don't ever feel bad about like the content and the information and the stories that she's putting out there. You feel good. I learned about her. So her company's name is Mix and Match Mama, and she does everything from cookbooks and like amazing meals to travel, and her and her family have adopted 2 little girls from China, so we will be talking about them today. I got to know Shay because actually her brother was on The Bachelor, Sean Lowe, and so I don't honestly remember. I think I saw her on the show and then was like, she's adorable, and I don't know how I got connected with her, but anyway, I feel like my life is enriched because I follow her on social media, and I just reached out and asked if she'd be willing to talk about her daughter's surgeries because she's pretty vocal about her daughter going to the hospital and their story, and she was willing to share. So it's just a real honor to have her here and share their very different, unique medical experiences. I hope that you enjoy this, and please feel free to go find Shay on Instagram at Mix and Match Mama, and I'll link to everything in the show notes page. But she's just an amazing light, and I hope you enjoy and get something out of our conversation today.
My husband, Andrew, and I, we have 4 kids. Our oldest 2 are biological kiddos. We have Kensington and Smith. And when they were 4 and 5, we went to China and we adopted a sweet, precious little baby girl named Ashby. She was 2.5 when we adopted her, and she was so amazing and so wonderful that we went back a year later and we adopted another little girl from China. Her name is Mabley. So we have 4 kiddos, 2 bio kids, 2 that came from China. But Ashby is our daughter that is just absolutely amazing, but she does have she was born with a syndrome that affects every little aspect of her life for the most part. So she's 8.5 now, almost 9. And if you met her, you would never think anything slows her down, but she has Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. And so that's what we deal with over here.
So before you guys adopted her, did you know that she would have any issues? Were they able to explain that she may have some medical complexities, or how did that work?
Yes. So in China, their international adoptions require that the child you're adopting has a special need. So that runs the gamut of a million different things. And what they consider a special need and what we might here in the United States are very different. So they have some obvious special needs, kids with different types of syndromes, of course, kids with abnormalities or anomalies. But then they also consider some things a special need if they're born with a low birth weight or premature. hearing impaired, vision impaired. It runs the gamut. So we did know that the kids that we adopted from China would have a special need, as that is required. China does not adopt out kids without special needs. So we knew that she would have one. When we got Ashby's information, we got it about 6 months before we actually got to go to China and meet her in person. But her information, I think, was as specific as they had. She was in an orphanage in China with 850 children. So, you know, they didn't have time to pour into her and to take her to the doctor and to get scans, MRIs. And they just knew that she was a little girl that had some sort of malformation on her arm. And so there were, in the information that we had, there were lots of pictures of her arm and what, I don't even know if they're doctors, what people that had gone into the orphanage to diagnose her thought that it could possibly be. Okay. There are so many amazing adoption doctors here in the United States, and their specialty is to look at files and really look at the file and the photos and ask the questions so that the adoptive parents have a better idea just of what's happening to their sweet kiddos over there in the foreign countries. So we had a doctor here look at her file, and she was the first one that said, I think it might be Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome, KTS. But we didn't know, and we wouldn't know anything until we got her back over here. And it's completely physical. It's not cognitive. It has nothing, does not affect her learning or anything like that. It's a physical malformation. So we went knowing she had a problem with her arm. We did not know the extent of it until we got here and were able to do the proper kind of testing here.
Gotcha. And so I'm trying to keep track. Was Ashby the last kiddo you adopted, the most recent one? So you had your 3 older?
No, she's number 3 out of 4.
She's number 3 out of 4. Okay.
Yep. She was number 3. She's been home 6 years.
Okay, I see. And so when you guys came back, kind of walk us through what it's like taking your child to doctor appointments, keeping track of all the treatment plans, all the doctors. You're kind of thrust into this new adoptive parent world, and you're also thrust into the medical world. But it sounds like that was a challenge y'all were more than willing to take on, just as any other parent would. Talk to us about what getting into that hospital world was like.
Well, the first thing we had to do is we had to properly diagnose her. And because what Ashby has is rare, my normal pediatrician did not know what it was, and specialists did not know what it was. We took her to the emergency room time because something was happening, we could tell, and the ER doctor was like, I don't even want to guess what the problem is. Getting her diagnosed, seeing the right people, the right specialists, that was the hardest part. It's such a blessing because my understanding is and this is just my understanding, a lot of doctors, or a handful, think that they can treat Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. But what I've learned and what I've heard from so many people is there's really only about 2 places in the United States that really know what they're doing. And one of those is in Boston, at Boston Children's. And then one of them is in Dallas, and we live in Dallas. And we did not know that when we adopted her. We had no idea any of that. It's divine intervention is the only way to explain it. Wow. That she would end up, a little girl that would need to go to the doctor all the time and would need to have surgeries all the time, would end up living 20 minutes from a hospital, fully equipped and knowledgeable on her condition. So that in itself gives me chills every time I think about it, because she really had to end up in Boston or Dallas. Those were her 2 choices. And she did. She ended up, because you don't just want anybody operating on the vascular system. And it's so complex. It's not even one doctor, we've come to learn. She sees a team. And at first that was very intimidating to me. Once we got on the path of, okay, this is a vascular malformation. We think this is Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. We got her into an appointment to see a hematologist at Dallas Children's, and the hematologist said, okay, but we need to see some other people too. So the first few times we went down there, my husband and I and little Ashby, who was 2, we would sit in a room with 10, 15 doctors at a long conference table,
Oh
all
my
asking
gosh.
questions. It was very overwhelming. Now I can handle myself in that room, but at the
Yeah,
beginning, I didn't feel like I could ask questions or speak up because I'm so not knowledgeable, and these are experts in their own field. But it does require a certain degree of knowledge from a variety. A hand surgeon
sure.
needs to be a part of the conversation, a hematologist, an
Yeah.
interventional radiologist, a dermatologist. The list is kind of long, but we've narrowed down who is the best provider for her, what little group, and they work so well together. In fact, they're two different hospitals, but they come together and work with her, and it's really amazing. And we did even take her to Boston Children's Hospital to get a second opinion, and that was an experience too. But I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to have all of the information
Of
and all of
course.
the facts before we start operating on a real regular basis on my kid.
Yeah.
And I got all the positive confirmation I needed from the doctors there in Boston. So she doesn't just see one doctor; she sees a little team.
Oh
And
my
really,
gosh.
it took about it really not that long if you think about it. We brought her home in January, and she had her first surgery in October. So I worked pretty quickly between
Yeah.
January and October to get her in the right hands, to get her diagnosed with the right doctors and in the right hands. And she had her first little surgery when she was 3,
Okay.
just about 10 months after she came home.
I think about how you're saying this is such a rare diagnosis to get. Have you guys been able to talk with any other families or connect in any way with other kids going through similar things?
Yes. So the amazing thing is Facebook,
Yes.
can take a great big world and funnel it down to about 100 people. We have connected with one family in particular whose daughter has Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome in her leg. So it's a vascular malformation. It can affect you in any place in your body. It's common in limbs, and my daughter has it in her right arm, chest, right arm, right hand. But we've become sweet little friends with a girl that has it in her leg. And then I'm in a lot of great Facebook groups with adults that have it. And,
Okay.
it is comforting some days to be a part of that group, and some days it's discouraging
Right.
to hear adults talk about their own, how hard it is to live with that
Right.
kind of disability as an adult. But I have been able to connect and ask questions. There's a lot of things that are medically not facts,
Right.
like bloody noses. That there is no connection to having frequent bloody noses and having Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome, but a huge percentage of people in my group have them, and Ashby
Oh,
does too.
wow.
So it's one of those great things where a doctor will say, "No, there's zero connection," and I believe the doctor believes that. But then I get to be a part of my Facebook group, and they're like, "No, I have a bloody nose every single day," and I'm like, "Well, so does Ashby." So it gives some
Oh.
comfort.
Oh,
It's
yeah. It totally normalizes like what
it
she's going
does.
through with other people going through it. Yes.
And I understand that in a lot of those weird situations, the doctors cannot tie it together, but it
Sure.
just is what it is. So,
Oh,
and that gives me comfort that I can speak to both the medical experts, but that I can go to just the people. And there are people in my Facebook groups all over the world because it is so rare. There are people in Australia in my group. There are just people all over the world, and so it's great that we can share pictures and ask questions and discuss this together.
yes. And I love that you mentioned that whole part about like some days the Facebook group is helpful and some days it's not. I think really like
Yeah,
being in a good place when you get on those things is good so that you can
yeah.
handle what you're going to see because there are worst case scenarios. There is bad information. But as long as you can kind of learn how to filter that stuff out, like the goodness is so good.
It really is. And then it does make us feel like we're part of a community, and which is nice because you don't want to think that you're out on this island alone going through these experiences. It's nice to know that other people are doing it too.
Oh, totally. Well, that kind of leads me to Ashby's little community and within your family. And because she does have a physical malformation that people are able to see, I wonder how you or what words and language you use to help explain it to her so that she can understand what's happening.
Well, It's a constant conversation, not in a, we don't articulate it necessarily every day with words, but it's in the back of our mind. She's limited on things that she can do at school. It really does affect every aspect of her life. And so it's not something that we can't address daily. We just have to. So, for example, Ashby, her abnormality affects her right arm and hand. Well, she's right-handed, so it's impossible for her to write with her dominant hand. So we have to spend a lot of time, and she goes to occupational therapy to write with her left hand, which is her non-dominant hand, which is extremely difficult when you have a dominant hand.
Yeah.
So it's if you were to give Ashby a textile card, like a card with a sandpaper capital A on there, you know how you could feel it with your fingers. She would take her right pointer finger and trace it. But if you handed her a pencil, she has to pick up with her left hand. So her brain is constantly having to change that over. And it does manifest itself a little bit like dyslexia, and that she has to process things because she sees them backwards. She has to compute them the wrong way. It's very challenging when it comes to reading and writing when you're being forced to be a lefty when you really are a righty, but she has to be a lefty. So just things like that. She goes to occupational therapy. Most people think to strengthen her hand that's affected with KPS, but she actually goes to occupational therapy to strengthen her other hand, because it has to be strong like a dominant hand, and it doesn't want to be. So we have to have conversations about those things a lot. She really rarely complains about pain, but she lives with pain constantly. And so we talk about pain and pain management, and she does things. I can see her do things that I know are her ways of coping. If she raises her arm above her heart, it makes the throbbing go down. So I see her raise her arm above her heart multiple times a day, and she doesn't speak. She's just doing it because that's her way of coping with the intense pain that she's feeling. So it's definitely a conversation we just have about just getting through the day to day. But then we also have to talk about how, kids ask questions. And I don't think kids mean to be mean when they ask questions, but we have had to have many conversations as a family about how just most things are none of our business. And I just really try to instill that in all of my kids. It's really just none of your business. If you're at the park and a kid has glasses, it's none of your business. It's really like you don't need to ask people about their differences. I know that's sometimes not what we're taught, but if my kid's at the park and she's having a great day and she's swinging and playing and she's in the moment and she's feeling, quote, normal in the moment, asking her what's wrong with her arm takes her out of that moment immediately. And really, it's none of that kid's business what's wrong with her arm. Just like if we see a kid that maybe is obese at the park, it's none of our business. If it's genetics, if it's diabetes, if it's because they overindulge, it's really none of our business, right? And I just try to talk to my kids about how we need to love everyone and treat everyone with respect, but just people's problems or just people's differences are they're just not, unless you get to know them and have a personal relationship with them and it's a part of your relationship. We talk a lot about that because it deflates Ashby. And that's not to say she has low self-esteem or that she, no, it's just she doesn't get to be in the moment free of her concerns as often as my other three kids do. So when she does get to, it's really unfortunate when somebody else walks up and says something that sucks her back out of that and reminds her that, I can't go across the monkey bars because I only can hold on to the bars with one hand. And I can't do this because I only can use one hand. And so anyway, we talk a lot about that just in general, how I know sometimes parents want their kids to be inquisitive, but I personally don't think your 5-year-old would understand the complexities of vascular anomaly. So we probably shouldn't even go down that road,
Well, it sounds like really what you're teaching your kids and what I think is such a good message is there's a time and place for everything. And come and ask your mom if you have a question. Like, let's talk about, is this, there's a parent that you can go to, an adult that you can go to when kids have questions. I think that's a great way to do it. Especially, it's like she only, like you said, has these moments less than other kids who don't have a malformation on their hand. And so protecting that for her, I think, is your job. And I think you're doing a great job in that and teaching that to your kids, and thinking when is the right time to ask a question and when is not the right time to ask a question. And there are times and places for that.
There are. And so it's just a conversation that we unfortunately have more often than I would like when kids ask questions and kids point out things. But she's so happy, and she's such a go-getter and so tough and so brave and so strong. She really is. But just the black and white reality is she's limited in what she can do in PE. She has to get pulled out of her academic time to work on strengthening her left hand, right? She's constantly being reminded of, I have differences. And so I just try in those instances where she can really feel like a kid that doesn't, I try to let her do that. Because, and then not only all the being pulled out or not being able to do things because of her disability, but the pain she lives with constantly is a reminder to her. So anything I can do to ease the burden of that, I try.
And that is the role we play as moms, for sure.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about how her other coping skills, I guess. So what I'm thinking about is other parents who are listening to this podcast and they have a child who deals with pain a lot, or has to go to a hospital, or have surgery and go see different doctors. What are some things you guys do to help get through those experiences?
Well, this fall, she had her 22nd surgery in 5.5 years, which is a lot of surgeries to have
Shay,
in a
that's
very
a lot
small
of surgery.
amount of time. 22. And then, she also gets put under general anesthesia, which she does not do well on for all of her MRIs too. So the number of times that she's been under general anesthesia, the number of times every surgery, and this is just how it is, but with every surgery, she also has to have a cast. And so it's not just like a surgery where I wake up and I go back to school normal or whatever the next day. It is, I wake up, I have a cast. I can't get it wet. I can't play sports. I can't do anything, for however long I have this on. Mm-hmm. Then I get that taken off. And then 4 weeks later, I do it all over again. Yeah. So it's a lot. And this past year was the hardest. And she's getting older. She understands more too, that she has all of these surgeries. They're preventative. They're not to fix the problem. Right. Mm-hmm. It'd be different if she knew, I'm having these surgeries, but I'm going to wake up and my problem's going to be gone. But we're having these surgeries so that we can remove terrible things like aneurysms and blood clots. But your problem is still going to be there. And guess what? We're going to do it again in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So it's just never ending. Her entire life is going to be like this in order to keep her safe and healthy. And that's what we talk about. But this year was kind of, like maybe even a breaking point and so we have, and we are, we've reached out to make sure that we're taking care of her mental well-being as well as her physical well-being, because protecting her emotionally and anxiety and depression and things like that can come with a life like this. We are doing everything we can to protect her mentally and physically. So I don't think there's anything wrong. I think there's still in 2021 a stigma about getting help, but for mental illnesses. But it was what we needed to do to help give her peace of mind and coping skills and tools to use when she starts to get overwhelmed by the fact that I am 8 and I've already had 22 surgeries. How many surgeries am I going to have by the time I'm a mom, or by the time, I'm a grandma? Like, what does that look like? That's really hard.
That is really hard. Well, she's just, first of all, so lucky to have you and your husband and your family as her team, her advocates, the people she can lean on, the people to take her. That's a big commitment for parents to take on emotionally when they're having to take their child in for anesthesia all the time. So you have a lot on your plate too. What do you do to take care of yourself? Because that's a big emotional toll for you to watch your daughter go into surgery all the time and have to deal with this. How do you take care of yourself?
Well, I am a really big routine person, and routines give me, they make me feel in control, right? They make me feel like at peace and comforted. And there's just something about a routine that makes me feel really calm. And so we have a routine. And this last surgery, I joked with her because she made some comments in her post-op about when she gets married, will her husband come with her? And I was like, no, like, this is my thing. You and I are a team. I mean, he could sit in the car in the backseat and be quiet. This is what you and I do. And no husband is going to like get in the middle of what we have got down.
That's adorable.
We have a routine, and it starts about 2 days before her surgery. And then it goes way past the post-op stage until she is back to, normal functioning little girl. But the routine gives me a lot of peace. I mean, everything from the bag I pack to what is in it, to what I do, to our routine from coming home from the hospital to what's in the car with us, to where she recovers, to where she sleeps, to just that routine gives me a lot of structure and comfort. And even though I'm not in control of anything, it makes me feel in control, which relaxes me, which relaxes Ashby. So that's my type A answer, is a really solid routine makes me feel more prepared to cope with things.
I love that. I love that advice too, because you're right. Like in the times where we're not able to have any control, like any little thing we can do you're speaking to my heart, because that is how I operate too. I wake up at the same time every day and I do the exact same thing. So for my last question, I would just like to know what Sweet Ashby has kind of taught you since coming into your life and introducing you to this whole world that you never knew before with her type of illness and just the sweet little girl that she is. What are some things that she's taught you?
Well, we could have done the whole podcast on just that question right there.
I know.
More than I could ever say. She has changed not just my life or my husband's or our other kids, but other people that we know, other people in our church and our community have adopted kids, especially kids from China, because they got to know Ashby, because she shows them, she shows them how it's scary to think I can only adopt a child from China if they have a special need. That's scary. I understand that. But she has shown them that there are so many amazing kids over there that sure they have a special need, but they are so sweet and special and unique and have so much love to give and are such a valuable part of families, and they've got such big hearts, and that they need homes, and that they might, I don't even want to use the word discarded, but they're not considered as valuable in their home country, but they could be such valuable parts of our country. And I just really, really think Ashby has shown so many people that, and so many other kids have been adopted because they've seen Ashby and they've thought like, okay, we can do this. She is great. She has problems, but she is so amazing, and she's so likable and has so many friends and is so funny and is so sweet. And I don't know that she's ever really had a bad day, even though some terrible things have happened to her little heart, and she's undergone a lot. She just perseveres. And I'm going to stop there. I can just go and go and go, but I think she's really, especially in the adoption community, she's really shown people that these kids have labels given to them by China, by the International Adoption Associations, but really they're just great kids that just need a little bit of help and a forever home to welcome them.
Oh, well, she is just amazing. And I think that's a big testament to the support and the foundation that you give her. There's just no doubt that your positivity, your way of being there for your family and being her advocate has just a testament to that. Thank you so much to Shay for being on the podcast today and talking about your experience with international adoption and sweet little Ashby and all that she goes through and how you guys function as a family to help her get through it. Please share with someone who you think may benefit from hearing another parent's story, or may be interested in adoption, or has a kiddo who has to go through lots of surgeries, and it's just really a nice way for parents to be able to connect and find some community here in this podcast. So glad that you're here, and I will see you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.